So without further ado, let me introduce myself. I'm Nathaniel. I originally came from the Philippines, but I've been living and working here in Singapore for the past 9.5 to 10 years now. My work during the day is in IT. I'm a business
Ooh.
analyst. Basically, that's just being the mediator between the business side and the IT side. On my free time, my side hustle and now business is chalk lettering. So I'm so happy to have this chance to share chalk lettering with you. Can I get a raise of hands, maybe from through the screens or through the chat? How many of you have tried chalk lettering before, or just chalk? It doesn't have to be lettering. All right, handful of you. How did you find it? Did you find it easy, difficult? Do you find it frustrating? I'd like honest answers, please. Feel free to unmute yourself, Sue.
I think you have to sort of plan your lettering ahead of time so that you don't have to erase it and start again. And that
Mm-hmm.
the real chalk, it's powder, right? So it's a different thing to work with. But the chalk, I'm interested to find out about the chalk the crayons that you have there. And I just bought some chalk markers to play with that. And I'm also, I have slate that I've been working on, so maybe that's different, and the surface that you're going to suggest we work on could be also a factor in how you work with the tools.
Yes, great thoughts, Susan. I'll be touching on those topics in a while. I've been getting like mixed reviews about chalk. I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's a hit or miss. It's not for everyone, definitely. Chalk is something that I'd like to see more of because it's so organic. I mean, in the world today, we're so used to having things printed digitally. It just lacks that human factor, and the organic feel of it, I think, is still cannot be replaced. However, we also know that not all chalkboards are nice to look at. Unfortunately, in my case, when I see chalkboards that needs a bit of help, um, yeah, it feels sad because I just wanted them to have a beautiful looking chalkboard that a lot more people will appreciate because when you have your own store, you want to dress it up as nicely as you can, as coherent as you can to your brand. If any one of these things don't work well, it also reflects poorly on you, right? Just think about yourself. You wouldn't go out to attend a party with stains on one side of your clothes, right? It's the same thing with chalk lettering. I would say it's one part of window dressing. It's one part of showing the good side of what your store offers, your products. Because if you don't have a beautiful sign that fits the purpose, then it kind of defeats the purpose. I would say because some people will feel like, okay, I don't want to go in anymore because it just doesn't have enough connection. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to advocate for and try to educate through the years that I've been doing this. I started with calligraphy as well back in 2014 and then moved to brush and then moved to lettering and been doing chalk lettering for the past 3, 4 years. I feel like through chalk, we're able to bring back a little bit more of the finesse and lettering is something that addresses a need. It aims to speak the right message. So if your lettering or your chalkboard doesn't speak the message that you want it to speak, then it's actually not very effective. It seems like common sense, right? But actually, a lot of people don't really feel like it is because um, we tend to focus on other things more. I mean, as a business, of course, you have to focus on the things that make more impact to your business. And oftentimes, marketing and chalkboards and all of these promotional materials take a backseat, right? And I don't blame businesses because it costs money to maintain, right? It costs money to spend for your marketing efforts. But at the same time, if you don't do it right, then you're also not maximizing it. Might as well don't do it at all, right? So let me start with that note and let me talk to you more about chalk. So as some of you have mentioned earlier, there are different types of chalk. There's a variety of chalk that you can use. So we have the traditional chalk, which is the dust base, like this size that you're familiar with. This is the traditional chalk, right? It also comes in this form where it's a pencil form, but it's still the same chalk. The main difference would be how you hold it, or the thickness, or the consistency of the dust, or how hard it is. When you push it really hard, it becomes more compact, right? So how hard or how compact it is, or how loose it is, also affects the way you use the chalk. So different brands will have different compactness and different looseness. A huge factor when working with chalk is understanding your materials, because you're not only thinking about the chalk, you're also thinking about the board, the paper, the surface that you're working on. To be honest with you, I cannot tell you how many varieties of chalkboards there are, because there are so many of them. Even though most of them are wood, most of them are painted with chalk paint on it, there's probably no two chalkboards that are equal. If you look at the same type of board from two different manufacturers, most likely they will not behave the same way. So that's probably one of the things that don't attract people to chalk, but it also makes you as a chalk artist more valuable, because you're able to tell them, your clients, what works and what doesn't. So at the very basic, you have to understand your materials. Like I said, even this type of chalk is different from another brand of chalk. So if you find something that works for you, take note of the brand, where you bought it, because you will always go back to the same brand and you will always go back to the same store, right? Some people like looser chalk, some people like denser chalk. It's all up to your own preference. So when people ask me what my recommendations are, of course I can recommend brands, but those are the brands that I recommend because they work for me, right? And I hope you can find brands that work for you too. So there's these types of chalk. So lately I've stumbled upon this fancy little thing just a couple of days back. I was having my staycation, and it happened to be raining, and it got stuck at the mall where there was overjoyed, and I saw this. And uh, it's basically a pen lead holder that's 5.6 millimeters, I think, and it holds these type of leads. But in this case, I found that they had chalk lead. I mean, it's not lead, but they had chalk. So, you know me, I had to try it and see if it's gonna be better than what I use. So I bought it, and I'm gonna use it today in our demonstration. So there's also those liquid markers. I have a few of those different brands. The one that I have on my desk that is not yet packed because I'm moving houses is Versachalk. So these are some of the brands I use. I like to use Posca for the vibrance and the opacity. For Versachalk, I like the different colors too. Not so much for the white. Don't tell them I said that. But I also use other brands like Molotov, but mostly I default to Posca because I really like the consistency and the vibrance of the colors. So there are also a lot of things that you need to consider, right? Apart from the chalk, like I said, you have to know the chalkboards too. This, what I have on the table, is not a chalkboard, it's a chalk sheet. I tried this, it's from Japan. It's plastic. It works for some types of styles. It doesn't work for some other styles. So that's the thing. You really have to experiment. It's a bit costly, but if I can tell you something that should stay with you for a really long time, is really test your stuff. So even though you're not familiar with the what you're going to be doing chalk work on in your client, because all of them will have different chalkboards anyway, you can test it on a small surface, on the side, maybe just on the small corner, and see if you can erase it, um, even if it's liquid markers. But there are two things that I want you to take note of immediately. You can tell whether liquid markers will work or not most of the time. Number one is the surface. Is the surface porous or non-porous? If it's non-porous, meaning like it's made of glass, there's no holes in it, then most likely your chalk markers will work. Most likely, but you still have to test it, right? For porous surfaces like wood, then your dusty chalk will work better. Porous boards work better with the dusty chalk because there are holes in it, right? So the dust has something to stick onto. In the same way, if you use the liquid markers on porous boards, you know that the ink will seep through the holes and therefore it's going to be harder to erase. And that's what we call ghosting. Okay, so this is basically a crash course to chalkboards, but the fundamental thing I want you to learn is to test. Test. That's really the fundamental thing that you need to do. Because all of the time, believe me, I've worked with different clients in different areas, different industries. All of them have different chalkboards. You'd be amazed. So what they pay you for is your expertise. So if you can tell them exactly what you can do and what you cannot do with that specific board and the design that you can come up with, they pay for that. Because sometimes I've seen clients, our staff tried our chalkboards, but unfortunately we can't erase it anymore. Is there a way we can erase it? I mean, there are a bunch of ways you can erase it, but at the end of the day, if you're using the wrong material or the wrong tool on your surface, then can't help you with that, right? It's something that you have to just stomach and learn from. All right, so let me stop for a moment and show you a few samples of what you can do with chalk lettering. I mean, chalk lettering can be an art form, can also be something that's a design. So art is more like expressing your feelings or want to show a really hidden piece of yourself. I'm not into art, but more of design perspective because most of my clients are cafes, restaurants, or corporate clients who need something done for a specific purpose. And usually I have to solve a problem. So my work are usually design centric. So, but you can do some art as well with maybe some letters. Just feel the letters as you go, see where it takes you, and you just draw to your heart's content. And maybe that's expressing yourself too. So that could be art. So this one is done on a black piece of paper using a chalk pencil. So you can do chalk lettering even with black paper and a chalk pencil. Quite simple, right? So if you want to do this and to start and you don't have a chalkboard, you can still apply a similar technique using just a black paper. And then if you want to make it permanent, you can spray a fixative on it. Just choose the one that's for charcoal and chalk because there are different types of fixative. Just choose the one that's for chalk and then you should be fine.
Question: if you were to use stained wood, do you seal it first before lettering on it? And what kind of chalk is best for that kind of surface?
Now I'm gonna post the question back to you, right? You probably didn't expect this. I'm gonna ask you right back. Is your stained wood porous or non-porous? What is it for? What does the client want? What do you want, right? So if the client wants it to be permanent, then you can go for liquid markers, but can you use liquid markers on stained wood directly? Yes, maybe yes, right? If you need it permanent, then you can use it because you're not worried whether the ink will seep through the holes, right? Now, if you're not worried, sure, you don't have to seal it, but note that the ink will seep further and further into the holes, and you will need a lot of coats on it. Then if you don't want to have a lot of coats, then what do? You seal it first. So the question I have to ask back to you, what is your purpose? What are you trying to achieve? Is it going to be permanent, right? So these are some of the questions that should run in your heads as you are trying to do a project. You always have to go back to the fundamentals. What are you doing this for? Who you are doing this for, right? This is something that's fundamental, but unfortunately, I have to repeat oftentimes during my sessions because it's not usual for us to think about these things. We always think about the outcome, the output that we want to do. And we're so focused on the end that we forget that the important part is also part at the beginning. Because if you don't set up your boards correctly, if you don't use the right materials, you'll end up probably redoing the piece. And you don't want that to happen because that's a waste of time, number one. Number two, that's a waste of money. And if you're doing this for a client, they wouldn't pay you for something that you broke yourself, right? So yeah, thank you for that question. You probably didn't expect me to ask you back, but that is the thing that I want you to learn. If you only take back something, one thing in this session, what would that be? Always think about your fundamentals, why, how, and who you are doing this for, and your materials. Are they gonna work for that specific purpose? So far, okay? Can I get a thumbs up? Then we can proceed. Yep. Right. So you can use chalk for art. So if you want to make this permanent, you just spray a fixative and should be good to go. I mean, you can frame it too, if that's your thing. So this one is on the paper that I'm using right now. And this one is what I did during one of my lettering workshops, programs that I held on Zoom. So we're not gonna do something like this today because this is too ambitious. It will take, can anyone take a guess how many hours this took from sketching to drawing? Does anyone want to guess?
2 hours.
How many?
2 hours minimum.
2 hours minimum, okay? On the right track. Can I get a more or less? Anyone agrees with you? 4 to 5 hours? This is exactly why I've been getting mixed reviews with chalk lettering is because it's hard to estimate the time that you need to finish something like this, and it only comes with experience. The more you do it, the more you will be comfortable with the materials, the more you will know your skill level, where you're at, and the more you will be having comfortable time estimating the number of hours you need to. So I see the chat, there's 4 to 5 hours, 3 to 4 hours. On a good day, you can probably finish this in 3 hours. I mean, for myself, on a good day. But during this specific class, I had some issues. I couldn't reconcile some of the layout in my head. When I transferred them onto the paper, it was not working for me. So I had to take a bit of time to fix the sketch on my iPad before I transferred it onto this sheet. So these are some of the things that you also need to consider. I mean, if it takes you 3 hours to do something, you need to increase by 20% more or maybe 30% more in order to come up with a more realistic gauge. Because it doesn't mean it takes you 3 hours now, it will take you 3 hours all the time. It will take you more or less hours depending on a lot of factors, right? I'm sure you cannot just sit down and do something from start to finish in that time. Maybe you need to take a break, you're hungry, and then you forgot what you were doing, and then you have to come back to the piece again. I'm sure that happens quite often, and you need to consider those things when you're estimating the amount of time it takes, right? So it can be as like an art form, or this can also be considered something of an art because I'm not doing this for a client, I'm doing this for myself. I'm just basically going with the flow and trying to see what I come up with, right? And on a simpler scale, you can do chalk lettering like this. You can apply your brush calligraphy skills, brush lettering skills, and use liquid chalk marker to come up with something like this. You can also spray it with a fixative to make it permanent. You can also frame it. Lots of different options for you. And if you want to turn it into a bigger piece, then you can have an A-frame board that you can buy, and you can create something like this, maybe for your friend, for yourselves, or maybe even for future customers. So if this is something that you're into, wedding signs, this is one of the things that's easier to get into, because I'm sure a lot of you have friends who are getting married more than friends who have cafes and restaurants, right? So if you want to learn how I did this, I have a Skillshare class that's of course free if you just use the link in my Instagram bio. So my Instagram is Nathaniel Ong, so my name. You can go there and then look for the Skillshare link. It's free. You just use the link and you can access to that for free. Yeah. Right. So those are some examples of chalk lettering. How I started was quite simple. I used black paper. That's it. But I wanted to keep all my work, so I had a black notebook. Unfortunately, that black notebook is in one of my boxes because I'm packing my stuff for moving. But I hope you get the idea on how you can start practicing on your own. Even though you don't have a chalkboard, you can start with a black piece of paper and a chalk pencil, and that can work too, right? Any other questions at this point before I go into the demonstration? I hope you're getting a lot of value today, and probably a lot of you came here without any expectations, because most of you are probably doing calligraphy, right? And this could be something new. But I hope after today, you'll start picking up the chalk as one of your alternate mediums if you're getting tired of calligraphy. Sorry, Dorothy. But I'm not hoping that you get tired of calligraphy, just that sometimes when things get tiring and you don't feel inspiration, you have to pick up a new medium just to reset your brain. Because when things become a chore, it's hard for you to produce art. It's hard for you to produce something. But if it's reset, then you'll have an easier time to go back to your original medium. So win-win. Right. Any questions so far? Right. So today, let us keep it simple. I'm going to transfer a design that I did last night. It's, as you can see, I did this in my Procreate. It's very rough sketch. So you can do this as well using your calligraphy skills. So I think it's gonna be a little bit simple to do because I love scripts, and if I can just do one type of lettering, it would be scripts. So if you have any questions during this transferring demonstration, feel free to ask in the chat, or you can raise your hands and let Dorothy know, right? So I'll be focusing on this screen now. So you can pin this screen if you want to make it bigger. All right. So there are a bunch of ways to transfer your work to a piece of paper. You can do layout, you can do transfer paper, but for this specific demonstration, I'll just freehand it. You can also draw grids if you're more comfortable with that. Okay. The the purpose that I'm going for is very organic. So the end goal I have in mind, or the client that I have, is like someone who wants organic feel in their home to decorate their house for Christmas, and this person just likes to go with the flow and likes a little bit of elegance in their home. So it's not really serif or sans serif letters that are bigger and bolder. It's more flowy, and they want to have a simple sign that they can hang up in the home. So when I work on a chalk piece, I imagine who I'm doing this for. I imagine that there's a client that I'm doing this for. So it helps me frame the picture. It helps me frame the project as a tangible output, rather than something that doesn't solve a problem, because like I said, I'm used to doing that, mainly because most of the clients and projects that I do are solving a problem. So I like doing it that way. But if what works for you is approaching it as art, then by all means do you, right? I'm not saying my way is better or your way is not better. I'm saying that this is working for me. And if you want to experiment and try if it works for you too, if you don't know what works for you, try both sides and see what works for you. Okay? It's all about that, being fluid and accepting that you will not find what you're good at. You will not find a suitable process for you if you don't try both sides. But the same thing cannot be said about the business side of things. All right, there's a certain structure to running a business. Okay, and if we have time, I can touch on that briefly. But for now, let's focus on transferring this. All right, so I'm using the plastic sheet, and I'm gonna try the new pencil that I got, which is from Kohinoor. So I'm just gonna freehand it. So I'm trying to look at the visual center. So I'm imagining this to be hang on the wall. So in order for it to be visually centered, I will make sure that all the lettering are pushed a little bit higher from the midpoint, from the center of the paper. Yeah. So it really depends on how comfortable you are with your script or with the letters that you're drawing. And for me, it's just easier to, and I'm just really more comfortable doing scripts, so I can just do this freehand. I can even bring this down here, so just so there's a bit of consistency. So I might do that.
Nathan, we have a bunch of questions. If you are
Yes.
able to take some questions now. Um, so maybe at the end you can share again about the materials, because some people came in later and did not hear you saying what materials you're using. And then, is there a feasible alternative to drawing grid lines on the black paper, as erasing the marks later might leave, as erasing the lines later might leave marks?
Right. So if you're using paper, there's not a lot of things you can do. You can either trace it, make sure you have a really good draft that you can trace onto the paper using carbon paper, or you can color in the backside with chalk as well. So when you trace it, the chalk will be superimposed on the black piece of paper. You can do that, but you can probably uh, there's really not a lot of things you can do with it, because it's a paper. You cannot stick tape as well, because when you remove the tape, it will make the paper unusable. You can use laser guides. In calligraphy, you have that, laser guides. You can also have a board like this, the ones that have lines behind it, just to guide your eyes and make sure that it's aligned. Lastly, you can use some strings, like tape it at the ends of the table. You can put slanted guides as well. So up to you. But if it's a piece of paper, there's really nothing much you can do with it. Just be confident in your strokes. Anyway, you know what? Chalk is chalk. Even though it's dirty, looking because of all the chalk dust. It just makes it look organic, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. So don't worry about having too much chalk dust on your board, because it gives it the character that it requires. If it's too clean, then it looks like it's printed. So yeah, right. Is there a feasible alternative to drawing grid lines? Yep, that's it. Right. So just to remind, thanks for the reminder, Dorothy. So for those who joined in late, I mentioned in the beginning of this session is that if there's only one thing that you can take away from this session, it's this. You need to understand who you're doing this for, what you're doing it, why you're doing it. So you have to answer those and see whether your materials work with your outcome. So if you need something permanent, then obviously you wouldn't use paper, right? If you need permanent, you can use chalk dust, but you have to spray it with a fixative to make it permanent. So if you need it to be erasable, then you use an erasable surface with an erasable material. Then always think about that as you start your project, right? So I'm always an advocate of um, thinking about the purpose, because I think it's one of the things that we oftentimes forget in life. I mean, pulling back into life now, call me philosophical or whatever, but I feel like as I grew older, I became more grounded in my approach. It's less like go get this, go get this. Focus on the outcome. If you don't get it, you become sad. So I pull it back a bit after a few years of having quarter life crisis, um, things where your anxiety builds up and you don't know what you want to do. I try to pull it back inward and see what the purpose is. Why am I doing things? Because if I don't know why I'm doing things for, then maybe it's not something that I want to do. So I'm doing chalk lettering because number one, I like it. It helps me distress. Number two, I like helping brands and I like helping businesses create and attract more sales, right? So that's why I'm doing it. So for you, the reasons might be different, but find that why, because it will help you recalibrate yourself once you feel lost and you don't feel like doing things anymore. So I'm applying that in my approach and it has worked for me. And if you feel like that's something that you can adapt to, then I'd be happy to share more with you. Eventually you'll know where to contact me. I'll share later, right? So we were transferring this. I was doing freehand. The design was the G. The tail was going up, the H connected, but I decided against it because there was a bit of space and I'm doing this freehand anyway, so I can actually dictate what the end result will be. Then I will put some stars here. Yeah, then maybe hang the ball. Hang the ball. Okay, maybe make this shorter and then still hang the ball here. Maybe another ball here, smaller. So you can see that I'm taking my liberties and adding stuff here and there, because this is just a sketch and there doesn't there's no need for me to have this approved by anyone. So I'm just taking liberties to adjust it onto this final piece. And as you can notice, my draft is also from a square canvas, but now I'm using a rectangular canvas in portrait mode. So there will be a lot more space to work with, right? So this is the rough sketch that I did. So what helps me not smudge my work is, so you can probably notice that I've been using my fingers to erase. You can do that. You can use tissue. You can use cotton swabs, whichever works for you. And I don't mind the board to be having a lot of dust because, yeah, it's chalk. It's expected to have a lot of dust. So don't worry too much. But one thing is you have to be careful about resting your palm onto the board or onto the sheet because your hands tend to be sweaty and oily right? And you might move some of the dust around that you don't like, right? So what I find helps in those cases would be to get a piece of paper. I'm just looking for a piece of paper. Okay, or a tissue can also work. I'm just gonna get one. Wait, I think paper will work better. Hold on, let me just get something. Yeah, okay. So what this does is it adds another layer between you and the board that you are working on. So because this is dry, it will not attract the dust onto it. So as long as you don't move the paper as you move around, you will not drag the dust along with it. So make sure to keep it steady and stable before you try to draw. So this is where having a pen holder helps because you can actually extend farther than the usual chalk would allow. But you can use various techniques like resting your other hand onto your other hand to elevate it. So draw like this. So you have eventually will have to be comfortable with holding the chalk in different angles. So your wrist has to be able to do that. So as you can see, I'm resting my other palm on my other hand just to give me enough leverage to draw. So at this point, take your time. Remember your lettering principles or calligraphy principles, which strokes are thicker, which strokes are thinner. So remember I'm using a plastic sheet, and plastic sheets are what? Porous or non-porous? They are non-porous. So this chalk may not be well suited for it because there's not much pores it can really seep into. But this specific sheet that I'm using is okay. It can hold its own. So just using it because it's quite okay for me. And then I can just make it darker later on. So I'm just doing fall calligraphy now, taking my time to okay, so I can erase the other parts with my fingers. If I want, I can use a different type of pencil too. So for, you can see that this chalk pencil is a lot softer than the one that I just used, right? So this one, when I make the marks, it immediately creates the lines, right? As opposed to this one where I have to really go in multiple times. So this is where testing your materials and becoming familiar with your materials will be quite important because you will know when you feel it, should you use a different tool, should you use a different chalk, right? You have to adjust. And this comes with your experience. And like I said earlier, this is what the clients are going to pay you with, your experience. I mean, why they would pay you is because of your experience. Yeah. So now you can see that I'm slowly making the lines a little bit faster just because it's creating the lines better. I'm just going to do fall calligraphy on this. Then in a while, I'll teach you how to create different textures with available chalk dust on the sheet. So you can also use a normal pencil eraser to erase some of the marks. You can use tissue, you can use eraser, whatever you have at your disposal, your fingers. So I'm not gonna make it too perfect because it's just a quick demonstration. Just wanted to show you the process you can follow to if you want to do this at home. You can keep some textures as well. If you don't color in all this, the black space can have like a gradient effect, an ombre effect. I'm resting my fingers outside of the sheet, and then I'm propping my other hand on top of it just to give it leverage and ensure that I'm not smudging the white chalk on the board. To sharpen your chalk, you can grab one of those sharpeners as well. I like using the two-holed ones because I can use this for the usual chalk that we have, and the other one, the smaller one, for the chalk pencils. I'm not going to be too engrossed with filling in the shapes. I want to keep some texture there, so I'll just roughly do it. I want to show you another way you can achieve a different texture. So if you can see this draft here, the sketch right here, it shows that there's some gradient or smudging effect. We can use the chalk to create some smudges as well. So let's draw the circle nicely. Then just fill it in with dust. And then you can use your fingers to move the dust around. You can touch up on some of the parts that need some touching up to create a different layer, right? I hope you can see the effect. 3 different tones using the same piece of chalk and our fingers. And you can add the decorations, stars, dots. Then if I want to make this star more visible, I can erase some parts of the chalk here, a little bit of shadow effect, and it becomes a little bit 3D. Those are simple things that you can do that immediately lifts your work, right? So from the stars here, it's quite simple as well. These are simple things you can do to spice up your home this Christmas. Just color in one side, then we use our fingers to lightly smudge it. So don't be too afraid of messing it up. I mean, at the beginning, it might look not so pretty, but eventually, as you get the hang of it, it will look much, much better. Some simple decorations that you can use for your snowflakes would be the asterisk sign, some dots. Then maybe let's add one more bubble here. I will keep a little bit of space here just to separate the two. Because I used color from the right side, I'll follow. So it seems that the light source is from the same side. And if you want to make the corners, the edges sharper, you can draw over them. If you want to create a deeper color, you can erase some parts of it to create the emphasis, create contrast into your piece. So it's really quite simple. Using the basic techniques just in different ways can help you create different textures, different contrasts to the same piece of work. This sample sketch that I did last night I transferred it to this chalkboard sheet in about 30 minutes. We were rushing through it, but you don't have to rush through it. Take as much time as you need. If we were doing something as complicated as the one that I showed you earlier, this will definitely not take 30 minutes. So if a client wants you to do this in 30 minutes, hell no. But yeah, see, you can apply your chalk, your calligraphy skills with chalk as well. It's the same thing. You're just writing just on a different surface. You're doing fall calligraphy, and you can create something that can beautify your home on a bigger scale. Yeah. Any questions so far?
Question: what can you use for precision erasing on real chalkboard?
I use the pencil eraser, Tombow. I like this Tombow Mono Zero. So they have different sizes. They have this 2.5 and they have this 2.3. So these are the two erasers that I like using for erasing corners and tight spaces, because you can really get into it and then erase as fine as you can. So if I really wanted to make it neat, then I can do that. But like I said, chalk work is meant to be a little bit messy, not too messy, just enough messy to still look stunning, but at the same time organic. So don't be too hard up on yourself if it doesn't look too perfect. That's the charm of the chalkboards.
The follow-up question is, does that eraser remove all the smudges or ghosting?
No, you have to go back to my very first statement. If you want to take away anything from this, is remember the materials that you're using, test it out, see if it works, if it doesn't, see if it will leave marks, test it on a small corner that you can easily cover, right? Don't test it in the middle, please. Test it on the sides, because if you test it in the middle, I mean, if it fails, sure, just make sure that you incorporate that dot in the middle in your piece so you can cover it nicely. But best is to test it on an inconspicuous area. And remember, there are different types of materials, different types of boards, surfaces. Are they suitable for the chalk that you're using? That's the primary thing that your clients will look to you for advice, because they wouldn't know, right? If you're planning to do this as a business, you should be able to tell immediately to your customers, I don't think this will work with what you want. Can we do this instead? And that will have more trust, right? That will build more trust between you and the customer. And the customer doesn't say, they will feel more comfortable with you because you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, right? And
Okay. What
if
can
you
you
want
use to erase chalk markers?
it really depends. If your chalkboards are suitable for chalk markers, then you can just use water and cloth. That's it. Sometimes you may need to use like liquid soap, the hand soap maybe, or liquid dishwashing liquid. So it's not too harsh on the board. So, but again, there are so many types of boards out there that you have to test it out. So if you want to erase, test it out in a small area first, right? If the board is porous and you're using liquid chalk markers, then I would say good luck to you. Maybe you cannot erase it anymore because the paint has seeped through within the pores. Of course, it's not hopeless. There are things you can do. If you're not afraid of damaging the board, you can probably try vinegar or harsher soap, but that's on you if you break the board, right?
Nathan,
Test it out.
what has been the worst mistake that you have ever made? I mean, doing
Worst
chalkboard.
mistake.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I'm lucky or not, or I'm just really prepared. But I haven't had any like bad experience doing
Wow,
chalk.
that's
I've
good.
had like minor hiccups here and there. Maybe like I'm using liquid markers and I know the board is porous. So I know that every mark I make is permanent. There are times when I really extended the lines a bit, but it's not the end of the world. I can use black chalk marker to cover it and then smudge it with my fingers just to make it look a little less um, bad. So it's not the end of the world. I mean, that's why you have to be deliberate about your strokes. You have to really think about what you're doing, and always take a step back once in a while, especially if you're working on a bigger piece like a wall, a door. Always take a few steps back every so often just to see where you're at and just to ground yourself again. Okay, now I'm doing this. Now this is what I need to do for this part. Then I attack again. Because if I'm too focused on doing the whole piece and then I don't step back, sometimes you'll notice the errors too late. And it's going to be a lot harder to fix that.
So
Yeah.
when you are doing like a really large piece, say what you just said, a wall or a door, do you use any other tool to transfer your image?
There are a bunch of ways you can do it. You can do the grid method, you can freehand it, you can use a projector. Um, it's what's available to you at that moment. So if it's
Okay.
outdoor, maybe you cannot use a projector, it's going to be difficult. So it always boils down to how comfortable you are doing freehand and
Oh,
drawing the lines yourself.
okay.
That's one of the things that I feel like you cannot skip and you shouldn't skip is the skill to measure and do the lines yourself. I mean, of course, you can have projectors all the time, right? But what if suddenly it rains and then you have to complete the mural outdoor, and then, right? Maybe the client really needs it for something very important, and you committed to doing that. You should be able to have a backup plan if your original plan doesn't work. So if the projector doesn't work, you need to be comfortable with doing it freehand or drawing the lines yourself. There's no excuse for that.
Yeah, actually, one thing that I really appreciate is Nathan, when I see you explaining, there is such a clear thinking process that there's a lot going on in your mind. I mean, it's not like what you see on Instagram or BuzzFeed, and the person is just swishing out all his lines. But there's so much consideration, and I really appreciate what you said just now about testing, knowing your products, thinking about the client, what is the end purpose, and all those things are so important, and I'm so glad that you're bringing it up. Okay, wait, there's a couple more questions. What kind of fixative can be used to increase the life of chalk artwork other than chalkboards? What other surfaces can you use chalk on? I think this is what Nathan was saying about you need to test. Okay, permanent and semi-permanent fixatives, what would those be? Yeah.
So the fixatives usually come in spray form. I probably, I mean, I wouldn't recommend using a fixative that's a brush type because it will smudge everything. So use the spray can. Please use the spray can and then choose the one that's suitable for chalk, because there are a lot of fixatives out there and some are for acrylic, some are for different mediums. Use the one that's for chalk. So you can choose two types, I think. One is a matte finish and one is a glossy finish. So it's now up to you what you want. For me, I personally prefer the matte finish because it looks more natural to me. It doesn't look like it's printed. Uh, that's just me personally. I like using matte finish. Just take note that when you do a fixative, make sure that your chalk work is really neat and vibrant.
Yeah.
Because when you spray a fixative, it will dull the color. So your white may not be white, not really clear white. It will be a little bit muted.
So what about, are there fixatives that are semi-permanent?
I haven't heard of any fixative that's semi-permanent, but then again, your fixatives are also not permanent. If the spray coating is lifted, then your work will be exposed. So, um, spray enough, but not too much because it will look fake. But at the same time, don't spray too little because it will not be permanent. But over
So,
time, because these fixatives are also like like surfaces, if you wipe them often, then you might also remove some of the fixative as you wipe. So just take note that even though you already sprayed it, it's not necessarily like 100 years permanent.
So after you have applied the fixative, can you chalk on top of it? Possible, right?
Yes, for some fixatives, yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can still draw on it. Yep. But the good thing about chalkboards, usually it's black, so you don't worry about the other side's gonna be black. So yeah,
I'm just
that's the good
wondering,
thing about it.
say if somebody, a restaurant, say they have a chalkboard menu, so do they hire people to, to, okay, so I'm assuming that the menu is not permanent. So do they usually get the same person to come back to letter in the same style? You know, they have a brand, a font.
It depends on the customer. This is
Mm,
where your selling skills and their budget comes into play. So you can always sell your services as a retainer option, meaning they will
mm,
look to you and you will come back every month, every 2 months, every quarter to fix the board for them, right?
cool.
But it also depends on the budget that they have because sometimes they cannot afford to have you always come down to their store because every time you come down is an expense. And
Mm,
every time you come down, you also have a minimum, right, in mind. You wouldn't just come down to do something for 30 bucks for 2 hours. You won't, right? I hope you don't. Think about it this way. You're
mm.
going down to a customer to fix something for an hour or two. Then that customer lives an hour away from you. You need to travel 1 hour to 1 hour from. That's already 4 hours of work. And how much are you charging for that fee?
Hmm.
$30? Nah.
True, true. Okay, two more questions. Can you tell
Mm.
any brands you have used and rely on for fixative? And can charcoal and graphite fixative also work for chalk?
Yes, I am trying out the charcoal and graphite fixative. I think it's gonna work. I need to try it on these sheets, and but I think it works. The ones that I used before are acrylic, so I know acrylic works too. I like the brand Krylon.
Nylon?
So I use that. But you can also use Pebeo. I've tried it before. I'm sure you're hearing a lot of this for the first time because like Dorothy mentioned, it's not all the time that instructors or people who teach workshops will tell you about these things because it's mostly workshop. When you attend workshops, it's mostly activity focused, output based, and it's not really specific to anyone's criteria, anyone's requirements. But because I've been doing a lot of commission work for different companies and businesses, these are some of the things that I've come to learn through the years that are equally, if not more important than the skill that you have. Because sometimes, even though you have the skills, but if you cannot articulate what the skills required are, if you cannot tell your customers what they need to hear as opposed to what they want to hear, then it's also on you, right? So
Mm,
sometimes customers also value rapport and having a good connection. So even though you're not as skilled as another artist, but they can connect with you easier, they will likely work with you because you know your stuff and your skills are enough for what they need. When you want to start a chalk lettering business, focus on the foundations. Once you have the foundations right, you don't need to be an expert in lettering or illustrating. That will come as you go and do it. But at the end of the day, you need to serve your customer and you need to tell them what they should hear from you. So even if that can cost you the job, because that builds credibility. And credibility is important in this service industry. If they know they can trust you, they might not need your services at this time, sure. But in the future, when they have something or when their friends need something done, they will look to you because they know you told them the right thing.
that's right. It's true, very true. Okay, one final question. Have you ever used oil pastels instead of chalk for writing on chalkboard?
I tried, but it doesn't. I don't like the finish as much as the normal chalk, so I tend not to use it. But you can use it if you want. just test the boards, please, and the materials, and make sure that you can erase it if you need to erase it. Yeah.
Great, that's wonderful. Everyone, I just wanted to do a shout out that Nathan is teaching a course on, it's called From Chalk Dust to Dollars. And I think it's a very wonderful workshop that he's offering. And if you want to consider using art or calligraphy as a business, even if you're not a chalk artist, I seriously encourage you to take it up. Because, I was talking to Nathan just now early on and before you all started coming in. And I've seen a lot of skilled artists or chefs or whatever, skills or expertise they have failing not because they are not good at their art or not good in their skills, but they are just not, they don't know how to market themselves, for instance, how to price their work, how to value their expertise. And the restaurants are closed down not because the chefs are not good, but they don't know how to handle the business side of things. So, I just wanted to highlight that this is so important, and I'm very, very thankful that Nathan is putting it out there and helping artists to wrap their heads around this. And today you have seen, he's a very clear thinker. There's a very clear process in his head. And even though Nathan, you said it so many times, it should be common sense, right? This is common sense. I don't think it's very common. A lot of things that you said today, it's so obvious to you, but for us, it's new information. And I'm just very thankful. I'm grateful that you're so willing to freely share. So everyone follow Nathan and give him, some love, and also recommend to your friends who are thinking about taking this up as a business. It's good to learn. Yeah, marketing is a very important skill, and I've heard enough to know that Nathan knows what he's talking about. So
Glad to hear that, Dorothy. So
yeah,
thank you so much for promoting that. Actually, I launched the Chalk Dust to Dollars about more than a week ago. I sold it on pre-selling. It's actually a PDF course that you can do on your own time. There are also going to be workbooks. Can access the full course when it launches next month. So I'm now working on all the feedback that I've gotten from all the early purchasers of the course, because I know the value of having this basic knowledge. I didn't want to learn business before because I thought it was common sense. But when I started my business 3-4 years ago, oh my God, things were just so different the way I imagined it to be. I
yeah,
mean, I was prepared to some extent, but at the end of the day, I was not prepared for a lot of things. And I only learned about it through experience, through doing the wrong things day in and day out, and through hiring people to help me figure out things for me. So I also hired coaches uh, to help make sure that I'm on the right track. And if I'm not thinking about something the way I should think it, these coaches have helped me too through the years. And um, I'm ready to share what I know with you because I'm applying the same techniques in my business. And I've been using the same tools. I am using the same calculator that I'm sharing in that course. That's the same calculator I use to quote my clients. I'm using the same PDF presentation deck that I share with my customers. So it's really putting what I know in my heart into that, because it sucks not to know what to do if you are a good artist. I mean, come on, if you're a good artist, you should be able to sell your work, right? And it
yeah.
sucks if you can't. So I want it to be a good foundation for you so that once you have the experience, you're ready to take the business further.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Thank you so, so much. Thanks,
Yep.
everyone, for joining, for your questions. I hope you've enjoyed this session and that you will give Chalk some love and give it a try. And tag and share with Nathan whatever you attempt. I'm sure
Yes,
he'll be
if you try this on your own, I'd be happy to see what you come up with. So do tag me in your post or share with me on DM. My handle is at Nathaniel Ong, or you can visit my website here too, or you can email me at. Yep.
great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
being.
for your time. I know for the people in West Coast in the US or Canada, it's very early for you, but thank you for staying, and I hope you gotten a lot of value today. Thanks, Dorothy, and I'll see
Thank
you
you,
again in the
Ian.
next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.